Hey everybody, welcome to the final installment of the History of Psychology videos. Alright, and so up until now, right, we talked the history of psychology. In the last one we talked about the state of psychology today, and our goal now is to be prophetic, right? Let's talk about where psychology is going into the future. So I want to tell you, this is our last final, what is it called? Reaction paper. So let me talk about this. We already said this the other day, that the state of the psychology today is such that it's becoming an ever increasingly sliced up pie. All right, we're just slicing and slicing and slicing the pie more and more and more. So a couple of years ago, I was asked to write an article for, I believe it was called the Handbook of Psychology or something, and it was an interesting thing because it was a huge 2-volume book which was filled with articles, almost an encyclopedia of psychology, something like this. And there was one chapter on the history of psychology, and so they asked various authors to write the history of psychology before 1800. And then somebody else wrote the history of psychology 1800 to 1900. Somebody else wrote the history of psychology 1900 to 2000. And then I was asked to write the history of psychology into the future. And now this is a dangerous thing to think about writing, because what this implies is, of course, prophecy. Need to be prophetic, right? And so I had to make some guesses, didn't I? I had to make some guesses about where psychology was going to go. And in many ways, this article is sort of like what your reaction paper is asking you for. And here was my thoughts, okay? Number one, psychology is becoming more and more of an applied discipline, all right? What do I have here? An applied discipline. Yeah, all right. It's become more and more applied. That is, like I had told you, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Way back when Sigmund Freud was a research scientist, research scientists didn't pay enough money. He was forced to go into what you know what I mean, whatever. And so he became a doctor, right? And he applied it, and he felt that applying his knowledge was dirty. You know, this pure scientific generation of knowledge was pure and good and clean, and this application was cheesy. Well, it turns out that there's been a shift such that more and more psychology has become applied than it has become basic, okay? And that is mainly because funding for basic research has been drying up for years, and that process of drying up has become worse and worse and worse. So psychology, though, is... Well, how about this? I will summarize. What are these things? Are these saying? Okay. Nah, here. Psychology as a summarization, it goes like this, or my article, the premise of my article, is that 20 years from now, you will be hard-pressed to find a psychology department on a university campus. And it is not going to be, in my thoughts, it is not going to be because it is an unsuccessful discipline or something like that. But I would argue that it is such a successful discipline that in the last discussion when we talked about how the world of knowledge is sliced up into little pies, I think people are going to realize that notion doesn't make any sense, because what happens is that psychology is everywhere. That you would be hard-pressed to find any discipline. Hell, you would be hard-pressed to sit through any lecture in any of your classes anywhere that did not in some way or another involve psychology. One of my favorite examples is a friend of mine who is an engineer. He designs helicopters for Bell Helicopter. And you press him about how do you design a new helicopter. And in the end, here's what he says if you press him with the right questions. He says, you know what? I think about the human being that's going to fly the helicopter first and foremost, because if you don't consider the human being that's going to fly the helicopter, well then no matter what you make is a piece of crap. All right? All right. That's engineering. I mean, how much independent of, engineering? We're talking about mechanical engineering, all right? And you cannot remove human beings. You politics, humans. You want to religion, human. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're studying. Ultimately, it comes down to psychology. And so I think that in the future, we are finding more and more that people are able to take advantage In some ways, see, psychology is turning into a predictive discipline. That is, we're taking advantage of the ability to predict things, okay? Whether that prediction be in the world of clinical psychology and we call it a prognosis or something like that, or whether it be in the realm of politics and we call it voter behavior, whether we go to the realm of marketing or in advertising, we talk about consumer preferences. It doesn't matter. It's all about predicting human behavior, right? And therefore matching the world to meet human needs and human behaviors. And so I personally think that the world of psychology will disappear as a separate discipline. And that is just simply, you cannot have any discussion in any academic classroom that is not psychological, even if the person giving the lecture doesn't realize it is. It is, all right? I could challenge that one. You find me one, you might find one, but I'd be hard pressed to believe it. The business college. It's really human beings. History is really the study of human psychology in the past. What discipline do you want? Political science. That's obviously psychology. Can I think of one? Chemistry. Well, nowadays with modern knowledge of how the brain is working, understanding of chemistry is understanding of human beings. I can't come up with anything. Geology? Well, maybe, I don't know. But even that, humans influence geology and geology influences humans, but, that's off to the sun. Well, here's the thing, though. Now, let me talk about the world of applied psychology. Now, as I said, psychology is being applied more and more and more, and there's more and more appreciation for what psychology really is and what it can give, say, to a business or to marketing department or whatever this is, right? So we find that in the realm of mental health, however, we're finding that it's been an interesting ride because the mental health disciplines within counseling, what am I trying to say? Psychiatry, even pastoral counseling or something like this is being pushed by the insurance industry. Okay, this insurance industry is trying hard, very hard, to send people to the least expensive option possible. All right. Now, if somebody has schizophrenia, they really shouldn't be going to pastoral counseling. That's just not appropriate. But that's what the insurance company is pushing for. If they could get away with it, they would. Okay. But the problem is the reality. If you have schizophrenia and you have a mental health coverage that has like a $5,000 a year cap for mental health coverage, and I mean, pre-Obamacare, that's not particularly unheard of. You're looking at it and you're like, okay, that means I can go to my psychiatrist for, 10 one-hour sessions this year, or I could go to a counseling person for, 200 sessions or something. You're going to pick the counselor. So clearly people's decisions are being pushed by the insurance industry. But I really think that this idea that psychology is disappearing is really where the future of psychology lies. And so coming back to our very last paper, keeping in mind that cognition and biology are dominant themes in modern psychology, what do you think the future holds for psychology? It's very simple. I mean, one of the biggest moves and biggest implications, whatever, they're both true, is in the realm of artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is awesome. Hook up with a cognitive course. Hint, hint, I teach a cognitive course. Hook up with a cognitive course and we will talk artificial intelligence all day long. And it's very simple. You want to know things such as you need to tell your auto-driving car that that's a leaf falling from the tree. Oh, okay, and therefore it's not important. You can ignore it. So the first thing you have to do is go back to the human being and figure out, how does a human being know that that's a leaf and it's not an important thing to do? Because the moment you can figure out how a human being does it, you can program that into the computer. All right, and so a knowledge of how human beings process all cognitive activities is necessary for the future of technology. All right, and technology is getting more and more implemented. So cognition is huge. Cognition is technology. Okay. Biology is huge because every single thing we do at its core is biological. We're finding more and more and more. In fact, just recently there was an article, a cover article. I know it was Sigmund Freud. Oh God, you perhaps saw it. And it was Sigmund Freud, and it was like exploring the biological roots of Freudian theory. And so biological psychology has transcended. It started out, biological psychology started out with when you move, which parts of your brain are responsible for motor control, something like that. And then they started to get to more complex things than just motor control, and it got to be like emotions. How are emotions in the brain? And then it got a little bit more complex, and it got to be things like decision making. What happens in your brain when you make decisions? And now it's getting more and more complex, and it starts to talk about things such as morality. And you can find morality in the brain, or you can find immorality in the brain. The implication of this is quite simple, is that any human failing, I say failing, I don't mean failing, any human weakness, and again, I don't mean weakness, I mean anything that we see as undesirable can be fixed, right? Because it's all a function of the brain, and if the brain is causing this weakness or failure or undesirable thing, fix it. All right. And so we find that some of this stuff here. Now, how about this? Second question: is the future of basic psychology different from the future of applied psychology? And I would say yes. Okay, because the future of basic psychology is that it's probably going to remain much as it is today. All right. Basic psychology is going to remain an academic discipline, whereas the future of applied psychology is such that it is so, as we said, so overwhelmingly integrated into every aspect of life that you're going to find that this word applied psychology won't even make sense anymore. It will almost be indistinguishable in 20 years because it's going to be so tied and merged in with every other thing. All right? So now, you got to write this paper, not me, so I want your opinions as well, okay? We've got some facts. Give me some opinions. Give me some ideas. Don't be afraid to look up sources from someplace else, because remember, writing a history of psychology paper that involves prophecy is some dangerous business, but you know what? It's also interesting and fun to do as well. So I will see you around the next time, except that was a joke. There is no next time. This is the last one, all right? So good luck on that final exam, final quiz, whatever. See you later.